The HKTDC Hong Kong Book Fair returns to the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre on July 21st. In terms of visitor numbers, the 7-day event is the world's largest Chinese language book fair. But this year, it's turning a new page with a hugely expanded English offering. The fair is attracting some of the finest English authors, including historian Andrew Roberts. He'll be taking part in a forum in Hong Kong, moderated by businessman and author Sir David Tang, who recently caught up with him in London.
Now, Andrew, you're going to come out to Hong Kong for a public forum, 2 sessions, one for the Hong Kong Book Fair, organised by the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, and the other session at the Hong Kong University. And they will be asking you questions, why you write, how you do it, and what you write. In your case, you're a master historian, and you've brought out some wonderful books, and in particular Masters and Commanders, which I gather George Bush Jr. read and thought it was so good, he invited you to the White House to tell him about the book and how to become a master and a commander, I suppose. Is that right?
Well, of course, he was Commander-in-Chief of the American forces, and I was surprised, really, because an awful lot of people have treated President Bush Jr. as a bit of an idiot. And so it was quite a surprise when I met him to appreciate that he reads voraciously, especially history books and political biography, was able to discourse on the details of public policy going back 100 years, and was actually a pretty smart guy.
When you write a book, how much research do you do before you actually put pen to paper, or do you write it as your research goes along?
I don't think that's possible as a historian, because you have to master the whole thing in your mind before you put pen to paper. So I spend 90% of the time researching, 10% of the time writing. And so when I do sit down to write, I have all the facts in front of me and all the quotations. So as a result, what you've done in the libraries and the archives is to dilute down from the hundreds of books and the papers and diaries and letters and correspondence and the rest, what you actually need in order to write the book.
But of course, as you say, you've got to have something to say. I mean, you've written a book on Churchill. I mean, it's not as if others have not written on the subject. So when you came to writing the book on Churchill, obviously you felt you had something new to say about him.
Well, I was incredibly lucky because on one wet Friday afternoon in the Churchill Archives in Cambridge, when I was waiting for a train to take me back home, I stumbled across, entirely by chance, by serendipity, the verbatim accounts of Winston Churchill's war cabinet that had never been seen before. They've been sitting in the archives.
How is that possible?
Incredible, isn't it? For 35 years they've been there. The reason nobody had noticed them before was because they were in a very complicated form of shorthand taken by the Assistant Cabinet Secretary, which were sort of hieroglyphics, really. But when I worked out what they meant, and these are all documents that should have been destroyed under the Official Secrets Act. In fact, instead, they were kept and saved, and so I was able to use those as the backbone of my book.
Were other authors rather jealous of the fact that you had stumbled across this treasure?
They would never tell me if they were.
Yes.
Certainly the reviewers, when the book was reviewed, every single one of them mentioned this amazing cornucopia. It actually involves what every single cabinet member said, word for word, in all the war cabinets.
You get tons of letters trying to correct you and make remarks which might irritate you.
I get some letters from lunatics. The other day I had a letter accusing me of being involved in the assassination of Martin Luther King, which...
Were you born there?
I was 5 years old at the time, and...
a prodigy.
But as far as people who are double-checking facts in my books, I always welcome that, because if they have found something, usually they don't. Usually they've got it wrong. But nonetheless, sometimes when I've got something wrong, it's an opportunity to change it in time for the paperback, perhaps.
Have any of your books been translated into Chinese at all?
Yes, one book about Napoleon and Wellington was translated in Chinese. This latest book, The Storm of War, is going to be translated, is being translated into
The Storm
Chinese.
of War is going to come out later on in the year?
Yes, in October, and that's going to be...
What is that about?
That is a single-volume history of the Second World War, a analysis of why Hitler lost, why the Axis powers
Another
lost.
one on the Second World War.
Yes, well, the fact is that rather like Masters and Commanders and books on Napoleon, there is a reason why people continue to write books, and that is that people continue to read them, and there is so much still to be said. We have the most enormous amount of
I
archives.
read historical books, but sometimes I can't help feeling that it is all with the benefit of hindsight, and therefore you manage to fiddle around and fit facts to what your own analysis wanted to be. I mean, is there a bit of cheating there?
No, I disagree with you, David, because the key job of the historian is to constantly remember that that the actual actors in the great drama couldn't see ahead any more than we can today. Actually, of course, nobody knows what's going to happen the next day, and you have to tell the reader and allow the reader to appreciate that some of these subjects, there are so many different things that could have happened, and the reason that the particular thing did happen was because the decision makers were wise or foolish.
In the case of A Storm of War, I know that it hasn't come out and you might not want to give it away, but in a single proposition, why do you think Hitler lost the war?
The reason that Hitler lost the war, this is the gravamen of the book, is because he continually put ideological and political factors before the military factors. He put his fanatical Nazism, his appalling racism and his political views before the best interests of the German Reich and Wehrmacht.
After this book, what's your next project? Do you already have something in mind?
I've already signed the contract for my new book. It's not coming out until 2014, so don't hold your breath. But it is going to be a single volume life of Napoleon, cradle to the grave, 900-page life of the emperor.
I mean, I just find it incredible that you can still go on writing about Churchill and Napoleon as if, you know, there aren't enough books around.
But the fascinating thing, it seems to me, is that we as historians are talking about and arguing over things that happened in such a way as to continue to be interesting to readers for hopefully many hundreds of years.
When you write, do you demand a period of absolute no interruption?
I'm afraid what I do is to go off to a place in the French countryside, in the Dordogne, my aunt's farmhouse, where there are no human beings at all within 20 miles. Because you need to get into complete thought depth mode. You have to get rid of every other consideration. You have to put the whole of the rest of your life on hold and concentrate solely on the life of somebody else.
When you get the book in your hand, obviously that is the most exciting moment, I gather, for an author. I'm a minor author, but when I get my hands on my first volume, I feel there's a frisson of excitement.
When you see the first copy, as you say, it's a magical moment, a fabulous moment.
Do you ever read your own book?
No. I do read my reviews, not always. If I can see that it's written by an enemy of mine or someone who, or the title is very unpleasant, then I don't bother reading it. But otherwise,
authors always sometimes say that they don't really care, but they do, don't they? I mean, you do.
You must do. Because if you're serious about what you do, we should never take ourselves seriously, but we should take what we do seriously. And if you're serious about what you do, then of course the intellectual and academic reception of what you do is going to be important to you. And if it isn't, then I think you're probably at a stage where you shouldn't write books.
Well, Andrew, I hope that you enjoy your visit in Hong Kong, and I hope that you are going to have a new lot of fans reading your books, both in English and in Chinese.
Thank you very much indeed, David. I'm hugely looking forward to coming out.